Hello, welcome to my presentation integrating with Donorfy. This is the presentation I gave on March the 7th, 2024 at the Donorfy Together Conference 2024. I've made this video for the benefit of those who couldn't make it on the day, and yeah, this is essentially how it went. So I am Andy Best. I'm an independent developer, designer, and illustrator. I'm also a Donorfy partner with a specialism in integrations. Here are some integrations. These are the integrated softwares, platforms, services, and apps that Donorfy offers out of the box. These integrations are working with Donorfy software because Donorfy themselves have developed them. So whilst we can, as the Donorfy user base, configure how we want these to work, we don't get to edit them or tailor them too much. We don't get to change their behavior or have much of a say in what they do. To that end, I consider these to be the closed integrations, Donorfy's closed integrations, and these are not therefore the focus of my presentation. But if you did have queries or more information required on these, that link in the bottom left there, support.donorfy.com, is where you'll get the knowledge base where you can find the answers to a lot of questions on these integrations. Now, I am more concerned with what I consider to be the open integrations. And these come in three distinct flavors: the forms, the web widgets, and the API. These are more broadly customizable. We've got a little bit more control over how these look and how they work, and that's what I spend my time doing, is building integrations with more flexibility, more sort of styling prowess, and more functional capabilities. And we can do that through these flavors. As I say, they are more open, so you can expect the same sort of behavior, that they would automate data import and export to Donorfy and from Donorfy, that they would create touch points for your supporters, fundraising managers, volunteer managers, your donors generally, anybody who you want to secure or manage data of or from without them needing explicit access to your Donorfy account, and collating data from other systems, just pooling all of that data across the web into your instance of Donorfy. So we'll start with the forms. Donorfy Forms, relatively new addition to the Donorfy product suite. They're very powerful, very flexible, and they're very popular. They are used broadly by, I think, virtually every organization that uses Donorfy. So you yourself will likely recognize these two displays. On the left here, that's the view of the form constructor, the drag and drop block editor for building your front end form, and on the right, that's a fair representation of the front end form, how it will render to your end user. Now, a lot of the work that I do on Donorfy Forms stems from queries like, look, Andy, we're really happy with the form, the way it's working, what it does, but we're not thrilled with the way it looks. It's not adopting our brand very well. It's looking out of place on our web pages with the surround. Is there anything we can do about that? Or potentially, Andy, we like the form, it's doing its job, but it's not. We'd rather the formatting of this particular field be different, or we'd like to introduce a new field that we can't quite handle. Is there anything we can do about that? The answer to those questions is maybe, maybe, potentially, possibly. It is possible to customize the forms to a degree, and we can do that through code injection. Right here in the unassuming form content block. This block is designed to allow you to get a heading or a paragraph or a piece of extra content, non-functional content, into your form. But within the tools available in that block, there is a source button, source being for source code. And it's there that I would inject my CSS, my JavaScript, that's been tailored for the form in question to update the way the form looks, the way it works, and just generally improve things and address those concerns that the charity might have. So, for example, this is a fabricated charity website with a very authentic Donorfy form in the middle, but it's a form that's received just such code injection for customization. So the first thing you'll notice that it is a Donorfy's donation collection form, but it's been repurposed as a ticket sales form for an event or something like that. So we have at the top here quantity fields for adult ticket type, child ticket type, and an under 5 ticket type. And right at the end of the form we have a summary, the amount to pay. So that's a calculated running total. So we'll demonstrate that. I'll pick a ticket for myself and my 2 kids up in those quantity boxes, and then the summary has obviously understood what that total needs to be, and it's brought onto the page the payment merchants that are engaged by that form, ready to take that payment. If I decide I'm only actually going to take my favorite child, I'll reduce the quantity of that to 1, and again the dynamic calculation understands that change. So whilst I just fill out these fields right now, you'll notice that those fields are in fact styled. We've got a 2-column layout happening. They're a little bit more padded and bolded. We've got some styling on the comms preference buttons there. The gift aid box has got its own section. So the look and feel of the form is very much adjusted. And I've even blurred out these payment fields right now so that nobody in the audience could rob me retrospectively. But again, all that is possible through code injection, the custom styling. There's one last flourish on this form. We're going to submit that form now, and whilst that payment is very real payment is leaving my very real account into this fake charity, the purchase complete message appears. Now this is a dynamic piece of text that appears in the same space. Obviously it's not as deep as the form was initially. That form took up a lot of depth on the page. What I've been able to do with this code injection is give the parent page, the website page, consciousness of that change of depth and adjust the height allocation accordingly so that we don't end up with a lot of white dead empty space. So that's a pretty tailored example. Here's a real world example. This is a client of mine, Rain Rescue. They have a commerce element on their shop, and if you were to purchase an item that was a virtual item, so nothing that's actually going to be delivered, you do so under the context it's a donation, and as such it's eligible for gift aid. So we have this gift aid form appear in any order where that's been found to be true. This is the standard Donorfy gift aid declaration form, but because of the code injection acting upon it, we're able to pre-populate all of the fields it needs with the data that was submitted in the basket. So we don't need to ask that shopper, this user, this donor, to supply their name, their email, their address twice. Just a little bump in the user experience, and just keeps that flow streamlined and smooth, irons out any irritation. So the forms, they can be customized to better support the brand, as you saw. They can be customized to better support the donor experience, as you saw, but it is not the cleanest way of coding. I used the word injection a lot there. Having to inject code somewhere where it questionably shouldn't be well, it's not the cleanest way of coding, but it's the channel we have available to us, given that the forms sit on Donorfy's server. We don't actually get the form code in our grasp, at our fingertips, to customize firsthand. The widgets, on the other hand, is a different story. So the web widgets are primarily or solely for the collection of donations. They are transactional pieces of code. They work in the same way that the donation module of the forms works, in that they can tap into Go Cardless, Stripe, PayPal, and more recently Apple and Google Pay as well. So the widgets facilitate the collection of donation through these channels and merchants. To create one, it's a similar process to forms, only there's not a block editor. Instead, you would head to the settings configuration area. You'd look for the web widgets in the search form there, and the interface you get displayed then is a series of fields you need to fill out to configure your widget, the context of your widget. So you get to set its product, department, fund, the acknowledgement email, acknowledgement post template, the currency, even all of the fields that are going to ultimately gear the transaction and map it to the right places in Donorfy. But here's where the biggest deviation from forms occurs. You've clicked the generate widget HTML code button to complete the configuration process, and this returns to you the actual markup, the code that comprises the entire form. If you were to paste that directly into a website or a web page rather, you would see this display on the right, and it's extraordinarily vanilla. It is not the sexiest form out of the box, but because we have all of the HTML that comprises that form now available to us, we get to do what we like. So broadly speaking, web widgets is where I really go to town. Lymphoma Out Loud, a customer of mine, they have a very bold, very blocky, very colorful branding. As such, I've been able to get their widget experience to reflect that and adopt that in a really seamless way. So as you'll see, we're panning between giving once, giving monthly, the various prescribed values that come with this. This is all configurable in the back end for the charity. They can set those amounts, they can set those benefit texts that generate. Over here on the data capture page, we have a summary of what's about to be paid for. And then we have all the necessary data capture fields from Donorfy and Stripe. Again, blocked out to support the brand, balanced nicely across the page. It's basically had a lot of design attention to ensure that the donors feel secure and comfortable in making their donation, and that they recognize that they are still engaging with the organization and that they see the brand and all the rest of it. By way of a second example here, just to show the flexibility of the design capability, we have the UK Men's Sheds Association. This is their instance of their donation page. Do forgive the lorem ipsum there. This video was made slightly ahead of those texts being confirmed. But again, we can flip between one-off and monthly giving. We get a different image and benefit text per selected value this time, and we've got a kind of checkbox format as opposed to a button format. When we've made that decision, we hit continue, and then we're presented with the data capture once again, this time on the very same page as the initial selection above. We framed the gift aid as a could you spare a brew kind of context, just to keep that light, keep that a little less government orientated and a little bit more helping the organization orientated. So there is the legal text and bits in that field though, if you do need to see that. Contact preferences, channels, comms, etc., laid out in a pretty comprehensive way, and then the payment fields down the bottom ready to be engaged with. So as an illustration of how we can change the templating but keep the functional code the same, those two examples were what I consider to be standard. This example I'm going to show you now for Florence Nightingale Hospice. This is ever so slightly more advanced. So their whole donation unit has been designed to be really compact and sit to one side, giving way to this full bleed photography. But equally, they could have had some content along there on the left side. The demo here, we're flitting again between the frequencies that we'd like to pay, the amounts we'd like to pay, the texts to quantify those payment values. Submit your own amount. But then here's the deviation. We have two additional fields down here. Are we giving in memory or are we paying in fundraising money? The selection made here queues up choices on the following data capture form accordingly. So we're now here on the data capture form, and we had made the selection that this donation was being given in memory. So when we move through all the standard fields, which you'll notice again, styled and adjusted to match the brand, when we move down here, coming into view now, we have these additional questions in the widget box, for who are you donating in memory of, and what was your relationship to them. Those additional nodes of data will pull through to Donorfy for the organisation to do with what they wish. They may want to print those onto some sort of plaque, or address this person in a certificate of some sort. Whatever action needs to follow, that data is now available. And the final example I'm going to show for web widgets is the North Devon Hospice. We've built a whole separate giving portal for this organisation, and this is a bespoke integration, where the former three were standard and advanced. This way I'd say is bespoke. We've got a lot more internal action going on. This demo is going to show you a little bit behind the scenes from the admin side, just to demonstrate that. So again, broadly speaking, the templating for the giving is largely the same. Again, excuse the lorem ipsum, this was recorded a little ahead of those texts being available, but they are updating per click. And again, at the end of this form, you'll notice we are presented with 3 checkboxes: donating in memory, paying in sponsorship money, paying in community money. To click one of these is going to generate a drop-down list of campaigns, Donorfy campaigns, that we'd like to map this donation to. So there they are coming in there. Care for a Tea, the 2021 Big Breakfast was an option in there, and that's going to be pivotal to the rest of the demo. So the user gets to decide where their money is going to go. This charity is using campaign to flag that. So it's a WordPress installation, and on the inside of the WordPress installation, I've built this custom view. This is a full breakdown of all of the campaigns available to this Donorfy customer. They're pulling in, they get to tick on and off the ones they want to actually display in that view, and if they want to give them a vanity label, they can, because then they don't have to share verbatim whatever they're calling their campaigns internally. It can be something that makes a little more sense to an end user. So here I've just changed that 2021 Big Breakfast to simply the term Big Breakfast, and when we come back to this view now, available to the user on the front end is the Big Breakfast campaign. So we now have our context for giving all firmed up on that first view. We move through now to the second view, the data capture view. And apart from the sort of layout and brand, sympathetic design to the brand, this largely follows format with the previous examples given. Excuse me. So the web widgets then. By comparison to forms, there are no limits on branding. There are few limits on the donor experience. I say few and not no, because we can't start introducing every field we could think of and axing the fields that are there. We do have some constraint on the data that's actually transacted into Donorfy, but in terms of layout and design, no limit whatsoever. Recyclable, and by that I mean we're using the same set of templated files to generate all of those giving contexts. So where you might need to create one form per campaign that you want mapped, as you just saw in that North Devon example, we've consolidated everything to just a one file set, one template, and control and ownership, because the code lives on your servers. Editing it, updating it, and amending it in any way is at your control. Conversely, forms is at Donorfy's control. And where you have use cases that the form ones won't settle and the web widgets won't settle, it's perhaps time to turn to the API. So it's a brief overview of what the API entails. The API is in fact not a widget or a product or anything in the Donorfy interface. It's kind of the language running behind the interface. It's the coding language used for transmissions of data behind the scenes. So imagine you have another system, a third-party system collecting data for you, and you'd like that data automated into Donorfy instead of having the need to manually pull it down and use the file uploader. The API is the language which that data would need packaging up into and then broadcast over to Donorfy, ready for Donorfy to receive. And Donorfy has an API, obviously, and it is geared in a certain way to receive data in a certain way. Your your initiation system will need an API as well, and they will fire out the data that they hold in their preferred format. Rarely do those two formats align, and so some totally bespoke development is required to reformat and sort of massage the data to translate it between the two systems, and we get that data and push that data via the API languages. So as an example here, Mesothelioma UK, I built for them an application whereby their telephone agents receive a call from somebody and they get to log the salient details of that call into this totally bespoke app that exists here. The process starts with asking for the caller's email address, because Donorfy uses that as the primary index key for its constituents. And with that knowledge, we do a lookup. If we find them in the system, that message is green. If we don't, it's red, and we'd like to get all the details we need. It's a brand new caller, and we're going to create a constituent record for them on the fly. So they're asking these questions. We're capturing the stuff that we need to know about them. We get down to the call details here. All of this stuff is contextually relevant to the call and indeed the organization. These fields are all going to punt over to an activity in Donorfy. So the activity is ready for each of these field types. The call notes is going to wind up in the notes area of that activity as well. And at the end of this form, the telephone agent submits it, and that initiates the API to prepare this data into the language and the repositories Donorfy needs it to be in. And it also fires off an email from the server to the internal department that needs to see this data in a comprehensive, digestible package. So there's an email template built in there as well. Oh, this video is looping over. Sobel House Hospice, a client of mine, they have, again, they have a commerce element to their website. They also now have a bespoke Donorfy integration, whereby every order that's placed in that website passes through a bespoke developed script, and that script ultimately engages the API to push data across to Donorfy. So the data in question, it's transaction data. We itemize the basket. We look at the items in the basket. We set allocations for those items. We assign the different necessary departments and products and funds and things for each item. And I think we also handle shipping costs, processing costs, and things like this. So the full breakdown of what their WooCommerce package gives us gets ended up reflected in Donorfy for reporting and reconciliation in the finance apps. Similarly, I have a client, Hope Health Action. They use a platform called Fundraise Up for their donation collection, and up until recently they were manually pulling down exports and uploading to Donorfy. Now that's happening automatically because we have a bespoke package running in between Fundraise Up and Donorfy, transmitting those donations via the API. There's a lot of interesting things going on with this particular account as well. There is a US audience, there's a UK audience, so gift aid becomes a conditional factor, tagging of constituents is a conditional factor. There's some newsletter sign up logic in there as well, which is quite bespoke, so we're addressing purposes and communication channels in a specific way as well. So the layer in the middle, the bespoke layer in the middle, is heavily tailored to this client, and that's possible because we are doing everything outside of the prescribed widgets or forms framework. We're doing what we want, and the API is just the final flourish on that exchange. And then a couple of my widget examples that are flashing through on the left here, they ultimately do engage the API after the fact, retrospectively. So for various reasons, we capture data in the widget submission that the widget submission itself doesn't do anything with, can't handle it. But by way of creating a custom Donorfy list, assigning a trigger, building a Donorfy trigger and training it on that list to watch for new transactions coming in. We then assign an action on that trigger, a HTTP post, and again that's a delivery mechanism to get data out over to a bespoke script sitting on a server somewhere ready to interpret that data and do something else with it. So we might be collecting people's shoe sizes, their dates of birth, their preferred email communication channel, or whatever it might be, an additional node of data that the widget won't handle. We grab it through the widget and it sits dormant until this trigger takes action, hands that information over to a script, and we get to, it's the API, we get to do what we want with it, assign it in the right places to the right people, and just bolster that data transmission experience. The final application of the API that I'd like to talk about are my own integrations that I've been developing for my Charity Toolkit program. It's because of the API that it's been possible to build these. Again, these are open integrations. They are not baked into Donorfy, but they do work exclusively with Donorfy. So Access charity websites, which was formerly Raising IT, and Much Loved. These are two platforms that now are totally automated through my integrations, that donor lookup and creation, comms preferences, gift aid where applicable, and every transaction moving through those systems is automatically mapped over to Donorfy to consolidate all the reporting of all these various systems into the Donorfy CRM. It is possible to play with the API immediately. Whilst the bespoke script development aspect of it will need a sort of specialist touch and knowledge of how to code what to do, the actual interface, the means to interface with the API is available right now. You just need two things to do that. You need a piece of software called Postman on the left hand side there. And then you need to visit that URL that's at the bottom on the right hand side there, data.donorfy.com/help/index, and that will pull up a directory of all of the endpoints and the values that those endpoints respect for the API. So you can look up your own postal address just by simply submitting your email address, for example. You can look up all the campaigns you currently have stored in your Donorfy instance. You can basically address your Donorfy account without being logged into your Donorfy account. It's obviously very authentically connected. There's passwords and you've got to create the API permissions and everything like that. It's not the Wild West, but but the point is you can do this yourself already at home, and just to kind of grapple with the premise of how the API works and what it can do for you. You can see what kind of data is available, and that might help you shape the kind of integrations that you might want to build yourself, or you'd like to commission the build of. Yeah, go home, give it a try, see what you think. All right, and then that was the any questions aspect of the presentation, which obviously I can't do anything with on this video, but terrific. Thanks for that. If you do have any questions, you can reach me on the website andybest.com, or send me have a look out for me on the Donorfy Facebook group, as I waft in and out of there on occasion. All right, thanks very much.